so you were just listening to the key testimony in this Wisconsin trial from Jamari Cook, who is the co-defendant in this case. Jamari Cook is describing, you're hearing him there, describing how Daniel Tate choked Olivia McKay, that 17-year-old girl who he had met online, choking her and then dunking her in the water. I'm here with Brian Claypool. Let's first talk about how he came off on the stand. Because I got to tell you, obviously he's in his jumpsuit. He's got his cuffs on, which doesn't play well for the prosecution. I believed him. What do you think?
Well, I think it's a double-edged sword. Well, for this reason, Cook to me came off almost as callous as Tate. So I'm focusing less right now on, do I believe this guy? And as I was looking at his testimony, I'm like, wow, this guy is very evil too. For example, remember the question by the prosecutor? Hey, how did you feel when you saw Tate with his arm underneath her throat? Were you concerned? What was his answer? Well, I was initially concerned. I mean, I was thinking, oh, you were initially concerned, then you became not concerned? You did nothing then you watched this girl get murdered, did nothing to intervene, you helped Tate afterwards? That leads me to believe, if I'm the defense lawyer, that Cook knew exactly what was going to go down when they went.
Brian, I 100% agree with you, and you can see there, that's some video of Cook testifying. I think he knew what was going down. I think he knew that they were after the car because he had no reason for not stopping this. If he was really that concerned about what was going on and didn't want to be involved in a murder, then you see your friend choking out a woman, you stop it. However, there is the other side of it, which is, and maybe the prosecution is trying to go there with this, apparently, maybe he let them have their privacy because there was going to be some kind of sexual activity between the two of them. And maybe, Daniel Tate had boasted about how he likes to choke out women during sex. So perhaps that's why he didn't intervene. He didn't say that, so we don't know.
Well, to me, I'm still single, believe it or not. I'm single living out here in LA. And I'll tell you this, if I met a woman online and I'm going to go meet her for a date, I'm not taking my buddy with me. So why in the world is Cook even there in the first place? That's really odd and suspicious. If I'm the defense lawyer, that's what I'm going to be arguing in closing argument. But I get what you're saying. You wash your hands of everything bad that I've told you about Jamari Cook. He looks horrible, just as bad in my mind as Tate. But at the end of the day, he is saying that he saw Tate do something really horrible. So I think what the prosecutor's got to do to minimize this collateral damage with Cook is tie in the medical evidence. That's what I referred to earlier. Focus in closing on the autopsy report, the cause of death, and then tie that to Tate, and then you combine that with Cook's testimony, and then I think you've got the conviction.
Okay, well, but let's see where the defense is going with all of this, Brian, because the defense is trying to pin this murder on Jamari Cook. Take a listen to some of their opening statements to see where they're going with this. All right, we're just listening to the defense opening statement in the Wisconsin murder on the beach trial that we're following out of the Kenosha area. I'm here with Brian Claypool, criminal defense attorney. Brian, listen, I don't personally think that was the most effective opening statement by the defense attorney. It was, she didn't seem very passionate to me. That aside, what do you take out of her substance?
Well, she doesn't have a lot to work with, so the only strategy the defense really has in this case is look at this guy, Jamari Cook. He's the guy that did it, and they're shifting. They're basically putting Cook on trial, and you just had a clip earlier for your viewers. Cook's in the courtroom. He's in shackles. He's in an orange jumpsuit. He says, "Hey, hopefully I'll get a deal out of this thing." So to that extent, it maybe worked a little bit. But let me tell you two colossal problems that the defense has with making this argument and trying to blame it on Cook. Number one, how are they going to prove that Cook is the guy responsible for the murder, unless Tate takes the stand. He's going to get up there and say, look, I was there and Cook did it. If Tate's going to plead the fifth, not go up there and testify, if I'm the prosecutor, then I'm saying, how in the world can they make that argument with zero evidence?
That's, you know what, that thought, it was exactly going through my head, because really, from what I can tell, the defense in this case is, it wasn't my guy Daniel Tate, it was Jamari Cook that strangled, murdered this 17-year-old Olivia McKay, not Daniel Tate, who you see his mugshot right there. So if that's the case, this becomes a he said case, right? And you're going to have to get Daniel Tate on the stand.
He's the only person, Rachel, that can come into the courtroom and say, Cook did it. Those were the only two people on the planet who were there. The second problem the defense has with this argument is, you mentioned earlier, 2 other women have already come into the trial and testified that Tate choked them during a sexual encounter as well.
But Brian, we did talk about earlier how those 3 women, at least 2 of them changed their story. The first one said on the stand that yes, this happened, but when she talked to police, she kind of didn't really say that. The third one said no, he never did that. So that's not that strong of evidence either. Yeah,
that's true. And here's an interesting point I wanted to share with you. To me, this is a tragic case. But there's an issue here that I think that the defense has to flush out more for a possible appeal. Because as a criminal defense lawyer, when you're doing a murder trial like this, or a murder for hire, the case I did for Dahlia, we actually had our appellate lawyer participating in the trial, and we're always looking for issues for potential appeal. Mm-hmm. Here's one in this case that I think people are overlooking. What was the exact cause of death? Do we know whether the medical examiner determined that the actual cause of death was asphyxiation due to the drowning in the water, or was it the choking before she went in the water? Why is that important? Because remember, the judge in this case ruled that prior bad acts were admissible, much like what we saw in the Bill Cosby case, that we're going to let the jury hear from these other 3 women. Remember, though, Rachel, you know that in order to get that into evidence, it's got to be a similar pattern. So if I'm a defense lawyer, if you could prove that the cause of death was due to the drowning, I would then be arguing that it's irrelevant. It's no longer relevant to bring into evidence these 3 other women testifying.
Okay, so my producer just told me that the MA ruled that it was due to strangling. Her death was due to the strangling, not what happened with the water. So there you go. I didn't know that fact as well. But how does that play then into your argument, Brian?
Well, if that is the fact in the medical examiner's report, then there's a less likelihood then of this appeal being granted, like I just mentioned on the prior bad acts, because they're then you can argue
they're directly related.
Right, exactly. They're related, and it's a similar pattern then, and that is the actual cause of the death here then.
Okay, so very important stuff. This key witness, we're really taking a deep dive into his credibility. We're going to take a quick break, but when we come back, we are going to get into the cross-examination of Jamari Cook, who is the key witness that says Daniel Tate murdered this 17-year-old girl that he had met online. Stay with us. And welcome back, everybody, to the Law and Crime Network. I'm your host for this afternoon, Rachel Stockman. Right now, we are inside very interesting case going on in the Wisconsin area involving a man on trial, Daniel Tate, for murdering a 17-year-old woman, Olivia McKay, who he met online. The key witness in this case was a guy by the name of Jamari Cook. You were just hearing from him. He was called to the stand to recount what he says he saw. He claims he saw the murder. However, you just heard some of the cross-examination there, and he's changed his story a bit, not telling all of the details right away to police. I'm here with Brian Claypool, a criminal defense attorney. Brian, is there enough inconsistencies there that you heard from the cross-examination to raise any red flags by those jurors?
Well, not yet.
Yes.
And as you heard the prosecutor's objection, I thought that was very telling. twice he tells the judge, these are not inconsistent statements. And being a criminal defense lawyer, it pains me to tell you that I have to agree with the prosecutor on this. What I mean by that is Cook was asked to give a statement. That's different than omitting something from a statement is different than an investigator asking you point blank. For example, Mr. Cook, did you witness Mr. Tate strangle Olivia? He says initially, no, and then he comes into court and says, yes, I did. That's completely different. That's an inconsistent statement. But not putting something initially in a report, to me, is not inconsistent, number one. Number two, this is what I believe, especially the distance one. Remember the defense lawyers, like you said, 5 or 10 feet, now it's 30 feet. That's what we call impeachment on a collateral issue. I think that's more collateral than it is substantive. Who really cares whether it's 5 feet, 10 feet, or 20 feet at this point when you have an autopsy report that says that she was killed and strangled and drowned in the water. So I don't think this is enough. I hope there's more.
Well, I was just going to say, good tease there, Brian, because there is more. And we're about now to take you into the critical part of this. And this is when he is asked, Jamari Cook is asked, why didn't he intervene? Let's take a listen to more of Jamari Cook's testimony. Take a listen. Okay, so the defense attorney is really trying to pick away at the fact that, when he testified in this trial, he didn't say exactly what he said to police when he was originally interviewed. Brian Claypool, obviously this is an attempt by the defense to get at this witness's credibility. Do you think it's effective?
Well, this is a little different than what we just saw. I think this was more powerful by the defense lawyer because it now portrays Cook as being heartless, callous, and now having a potential motive to see Olivia McCabe dead. So this is pretty chilling testimony. I mean, he arguably, Cook has given a statement saying, if she gets up, then we're both going to jail. So that really now, to me, puts this in a different stratosphere, that Cook really has a reason to see her die. But that said, you and I talked a few minutes ago.
But Brian, that's a reason that he didn't want to intervene, right?
Yeah, but I'm trying to tie that to the argument by defense counsel that he did it. Remember, we talked about it a few minutes ago. Defense counsel trying to argue in an opening, they said, Cook, you did it. You're actually the guy that did this. So this does provide a link to make that argument now because he's given a statement that could show that he had a reason to do this. That's what I meant.
Yes.
But it's still missing the key fact that you mentioned a few minutes ago, which is how in the world are you going to prove that he did it without Tate coming up and pointing the finger at Cook? You still need that.
Honestly, as I'm hearing this too, and as I'm hearing your comments, I'm starting to think that Jamari Cook is more of a co-conspirator in all of this. Now, he's facing charges for disposing of the body and stealing the car, but the way things are being described, perhaps knowledge that they wanted to steal this woman's car, the fact that there was gloves and bags in the vehicle, or that they had these to dispose of the body before going there, the fact that he even went along with all of this leads me to wonder if this was some kind of plan that the two of them had hatched together. And in that case, wow, is Jamari Cook getting a great deal if he's only facing the disposing the body charge?
That is an excellent point, and that's why, remember we talked a few minutes ago, if I'm the defense lawyer, I'm going to call some of the investigators to the stand and say what you just said. Hey, look, why didn't you charge Cook with conspiracy to rob this young lady, conspiracy to sell her belongings? I mean, clearly Cook has committed more crimes than he's been charged with.
Yes.
And that's an important fact that the defense lawyers are going to make in closing argument.
And that is able to come out what he has been, the jurors will be able to hear what he has been charged with in relation to this case. Yes.
But more important, I would be arguing, very vehemently that he should have been charged. They've got to be more, defense lawyers got to be more powerful with this. He should have been charged with the following crimes, and he wasn't, because he copped a deal. He sold his soul to dump this at the doorstep of Tate. That's what defense
So even
has to
if
do.
you do buy into the story, the prosecution story, that it was Daniel Tate that did this, at the very least, the defense attorney can say, well, this guy should have been charged with conspiracy to commit murder as well. Okay, let's continue, Brian, and thanks for sticking around with us this afternoon for a few more minutes, in the very least. Let's continue to listen to Jamari Cook's cross-examination. Again, he's the key witness in this case. He's the one claiming that he saw this guy, Daniel Tate, take this 17-year-old to the beach. They were there together. He was about 15 feet away or so, or maybe more. And he says he saw Daniel Tate strangle her, dunk her in water, and the two of them disposed of her body. Let's see how he fares in that continued cross-examination. Take a listen. Do you want to help the state to save yourself? The defense attorney asked Jamari Cook. Yes, sir, is his answer. Brian Claypool, how does this fare in the juror's mind?
I mean, I am shocked. That is chilling. It's very rare to see another co-defendant with a lesser charge get up there and actually admit in front of the jury, yeah, I'm trying to cop a deal for myself, so I'm going to help the state in so doing. You hardly ever see that. I mean, people might think that's what you're doing, but what his answer should have been, no, this is what I saw. This is the truth. Tate murdered her. That should have been his answer. So this does help the defense try to make that argument that Cook really might have something to hide. Think about it, Rachel. Why does he have to have her be dead if he didn't do anything wrong?
Right. Yes, you picked up on that in the previous testimony, and it was really asked again during that cross-examination that we just said. He said to police, I didn't want to get caught up in this crime, right? So that was his motivation to let her continue to die. What did he know about this going into this? I'm sorry. Two guys take a woman to a beach, and one of them takes them away. To me, now that I'm hearing this, the more I hear this, the more I think that Jamari Cook was the lookout. Okay? I think he was the lookout, looking to make sure no one was seeing what was going on here. I mean, there's no other explanation for this.
No, I think you're absolutely right. But look, at the end of the day, is Jamari Cook being evil and heartless and callous? And is Jamari Cook being, copping a deal and bartering with the prosecution? Is that going to be combined enough to convince a jury that Tate didn't do this without, again, Tate getting on the stand and pointing the finger at Jamari Cook? That's really the heart of the case.
Well, this case is going to certainly get really, really interesting if we see the defendant, Daniel Tate, take the stand during the defense's turn to present their case. Now, if you're just joining us here on the Law and Crime Network, a quick programming note. We have two live trials going on right now, and that is the Wisconsin trial that you were just listening to involving Daniel Tate. We're also in a Florida case involving a toddler who was killed during a tragic drive-by shooting. Those cases, the Florida case, we've been in a witness who is a gang member apparently and doesn't want to, the prosecutors don't want us to show the face or show any of that testimony. And in the Wisconsin case, we're expected that live testimony will resume in minutes. In the meantime, we're going to take a quick break, and when we return, we're going to delve a little bit more into that Florida case. Stay with us. As soon as we get a live feedback in that trial, we will bring it to you. Unfortunately, we haven't been able to show you some of this trial because it is a very, with gang members involved, there's been some security issues. So prosecutors haven't wanted us to show some of the witnesses who are gang members. Brian Claypool, you've been nice enough to be with us this afternoon. As we go into, the defense's case, we're still in the prosecution's case, but we go into the defense's case in this. What are you expecting to see? Obviously, you know, this is a tough one.
Well, if you're defending the alleged shooters, the biggest argument you make in these drive-by shooting cases is they weren't there. How do you prove for sure they were there? Because it happened so quickly. It's dark out. As one of the witnesses testified earlier, remember he said that the windows were tinted, couldn't see inside. So that's the biggest hurdle for the defense. So the defense is then going to have to bring in an alibi for these two young men that you have on the screen. That's got to be the cornerstone of their case. It's
going to be very key to at least enter some other evidence that they were elsewhere when this happened. Brian Claypool, of course, always wonderful to have you here on the program. We appreciate your time this afternoon, and we wish you well. Hope you'll come back soon.
You bet. Thanks for having me, Rachel.
All right. In the meantime, let's take you back inside that Florida courtroom where we heard from the grandmother of that little boy testify. Take a listen.